The anomaly. Right now, somewhere beyond Jupiter's orbit, a mountain of metal and ice is breaking every rule of celestial mechanics. 3I/Atlas, our third confirmed interstellar visitor, is no longer where it should be. For months, its trajectory had been a masterpiece of precision. Every observatory, every radar array, every deep space camera agreed. Its path through our solar system was clockwork. Perfect equation written in motion. And then, without warning, that equation broke. At 2:14 Universal Time, coordinated on October 30th, 2025, the Pan-STARRS Observatory in Hawaii captured its usual nightly frames. Nothing out of the ordinary. At 2:27, the same instruments caught something strange. The comet was no longer aligned with its predicted coordinates. It wasn't an error, the data was clear, sharp, and consistent. 3I/Atlas had moved, not randomly but decisively. By 2:44, follow-up imaging confirmed it. The object had deviated from its trajectory by 37 kilometers. Within the next 20 minutes, that deviation doubled. Not a slow drift, an acceleration. No comet has ever done this. Astronomers immediately checked for the usual suspects. Solar radiation pressure, the force of sunlight pushing on dust and gas, can subtly alter a comet's path. But this movement wasn't outward from the sun. It was inward, against the pressure. That ruled out light as the cause. Could it be outgassing? When sunlight heats a comet's surface, jets of vapor escape and act like tiny thrusters. But spectroscopy data from Chile's Very Large Telescope told a different story. The coma, that glowing halo of gas, was fading, not brightening. There was less vapor, not more, which meant the object was accelerating while losing thrust. Something invisible was pushing a 30 billion-ton mass toward the sun. At 4:02 Universal Time coordinated, the European Space Agency's Gaia Observatory confirmed the anomaly. Its onboard sensors measured a steady, continuous acceleration, 0.0002 meters per second squared. It sounds small, but at astronomical distances, that's enormous. Over days, it could shift the comet's position by thousands of kilometers. The data spread quickly across the international network. Within hours, observatories in Chile, Spain, and Australia all reported the same results. The math was unambiguous. The acceleration was real. And it wasn't random. When plotted, the trajectory formed a perfect arc. A smooth, calculated correction that steered the object back toward the inner solar system. Like a course adjustment. That phrase, course adjustment, started appearing in internal memos. Quietly, carefully. Nobody wanted to say it out loud, but everyone was thinking the same thing. Natural objects don't correct their paths. By sunrise over Europe, the story had already leaked. A small astronomy blog posted a graph of positional residuals, the difference between predicted and observed positions. To most people, it looked like noise, but to anyone who knew how to read it, it was obvious. Something enormous and ancient had just changed direction. The post was deleted within an hour. By then, screenshots were everywhere. Within the Space Research Institute in Moscow, astronomer Lydia Makarova described the feeling in her logbook. It's moving like it knows where it's going. We track objects, but this one feels like it's tracking itself. At 10:36 Universal Time coordinated, NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory updated its orbital model. The results made no sense. When they fed in the acceleration data, the new trajectory intersected an impossible point. A future position inside Earth's orbital plane, within 3 cents, in late December. Not a collision, but close enough to raise every eyebrow in the room. Within hours, the internal classification of 3I/Atlas changed. It was no longer tagged as comet. The new label read, Unidentified Interstellar Object, Active. That single word, active, was enough to start a quiet panic across the astronomical community. By midnight, more data poured in. Infrared sensors aboard the James Webb Space Telescope recorded a subtle but consistent energy spike across the comet's surface. Not localized, global, like the entire object was warming from within. That shouldn't be possible. Comets heat from the outside, where sunlight hits them. The dark side should remain cold, but this one didn't. The heat map showed a uniform temperature increase of 3.4 Kelvin across the entire nucleus, as if the comet had a core source of energy. That data was never released publicly. It exists only as a leaked excerpt in an internal report marked preliminary, do not disseminate. By the end of October 30th, one fact was undeniable. 3I/Atlas wasn't just reacting to sunlight or gravity. It was doing something, and as it continued to accelerate toward the sun, one question echoed in every observatory on Earth. If it isn't natural, then who or what is controlling it? The silent spectrum. When something in deep space vanishes from every instrument we have, not explodes, not fades, but vanishes, that's when astronomers stop talking and start whispering. It happened on November 1st, 2025. 3 days after the unexplained acceleration, 3I/Atlas passed behind a thin band of interplanetary dust near Jupiter's orbit. A routine transit, nothing special. James Webb was already observing it, switching between its NIR spec and MIRI instruments, scanning for volatile signatures, carbon monoxide, water, methane. Everything looked normal, until it didn't. At exactly 6:41 Universal Time Coordinated, the comet's infrared emission line, the fingerprint of its heat, collapsed. Not dimmed, not faded, collapsed to zero. For nearly 7 continuous hours, 3I/Atlas became invisible to one of the most powerful observatories ever built. No thermal signature, no reflection, no scattered sunlight, just absence, a hole in the spectrum. At first, Webb's operations team assumed a glitch, a calibration error. Maybe the observatory had passed through a dust filament that blocked the signal. But when they checked the reference stars in the same frame, they were perfect. No distortion, no drop in signal. The blank wasn't in the image. It was in the object. And then, just as suddenly as it disappeared, at 13:49 Universal Time Coordinated, it came back. Same brightness, same trajectory, same spectral lines, except one. The nickel vapor line, the one that had puzzled astronomers for months, was gone. In its place, a new, faint emission appeared at 3.46 microns. First, it looked like noise. Then it repeated, perfectly, exactly every 12.07 seconds. 12.07. Every single time. For days, the data was locked in internal analysis at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center. The team ran every algorithm they had: hydrogen transitions, CO2 band interference, cosmic ray artifacts. Nothing matched. The pattern wasn't chemical. It wasn't random. It was structured. When they converted the waveform into audio, they got something none of them expected. A low-frequency pulse. Not a tone, a rhythm. 12 seconds on, 12 seconds off. Continuous. One of the engineers, half-joking, called it heartbeat data. No one laughed. Meanwhile, in Chile, the Very Large Telescope tried to confirm the anomaly from ground level. They saw the same thing, faint 3.46 micron emission, phase-locked to the same period. The signal was weak, buried in noise, but it was there. 2 instruments, thousands of kilometers apart, observing the same rhythm through different atmospheres. When data behaves like that, it's not a glitch, it's real. By November 3rd, the first reports began circulating through the International Astronomical Union's private communication channel. Most of them were cautious. Unidentified narrowband periodic emission, possible instrumental correlation, pending verification. But one report from Dr. Sabine Heller at the Max Planck Institute was different. preliminary pattern analysis suggests modulation consistency inconsistent with any known natural source. That's scientific code for, we've never seen anything like this before. The next step was to cross-check the data in other wavelengths. If the emission was truly artificial, if it was coming from an active process, it should have a radio component. So NASA's Deep Space Network tuned in. The Canberra array picked up something faint, a whisper at 8.4 gigahertz, right near the X-band frequencies used for spacecraft telemetry. The signal-to-noise ratio was terrible, but after filtering, a pulse structure appeared. Not identical to Webb's, but harmonically related, a repeating ratio of 3:2. That's not coincidence. That's correlation. For context, that's exactly the kind of frequency modulation used in controlled telemetry systems to encode binary data across long distances. But this wasn't coming from any spacecraft. There's nothing out there that could transmit like that, at least nothing we built. By now, the story had spread to the classified side of the network. NASA, ESA, and Roscosmos quietly looped in their defense counterparts. Not because they thought it was a threat, but because if it was transmitting, someone would want to know what it was saying. Only, it wasn't transmitting to us. Spectral modeling showed that the 3.46 micron pulse wasn't radiating isotropically, not in all directions like a natural glow. It was focused, narrow, a tight cone of emission aimed not toward Earth, but back along its inbound trajectory, toward the same coordinates in interstellar space where 3I/Atlas had entered the solar system. This was the moment the scientific community split in two. The cautious majority called it a self-organized plasma oscillation event, a fancy way of saying we don't know, but let's not panic. The others, the quiet minority, began to wonder if 3I/Atlas was doing something we hadn't even considered before. Not just moving on its own, communicating. Inside NASA's data center, linguist and SETI consultant Dr. Elaine Su was asked to review the pulse data. She didn't find language, but she found order. In the amplitude variation, buried under the main rhythm, was a subpattern. Ratios of 1.618, the golden ratio, a mathematical constant that appears in everything from galaxies to DNA to classical architecture. It's universal but not random. As Sue wrote in her preliminary note, it's the difference between hearing thunder and hearing music. Both are sound. Only one has structure. For now, the official explanation remains simple. Unknown photochemical process causing repeating emission anomalies. But behind closed doors, the term being used isn't photochemical anymore. It's intentional periodic modulation. That's the language of control systems, of transmitters, of machines. At 23:19 Universal Time Coordinated on November 4th, the James Webb recorded one last pulse before 3I/Atlas slipped behind Jupiter's magnetic shadow. Then the signal stopped. Not faded, not distorted. Stopped, exactly one cycle after the predicted pulse. As if whatever it was knew it was being watched. Jupiter's shadow. Jupiter, the solar system's great amplifier. Its magnetic field is 14 times stronger than Earth's, large enough to carve a bubble in the solar wind more than 7 million kilometers wide. Anything that passes through that field feels it, from dust to spacecraft. But when 3I/Atlas entered it, the field changed. On November 5th, 2025, 2:33 Universal Time Coordinated, the Deep Space Network's monitoring stations began receiving static interference across multiple bands. It wasn't unusual. Jupiter's magnetosphere is one of the noisiest places in the solar system, but this was different. Instead of the chaotic crackle of radio storms, they got a pattern, faint, rhythmic, low-band oscillations repeating every 12 seconds. The same period as before, only now the pulses were stronger. The object had crossed the bow shock of Jupiter's magnetic field, a turbulent region where charged particles slam into the planet's magnetic barrier at supersonic speeds. Normally, this interaction produces radio emissions known as decametric bursts, short, chaotic, beautiful. But 3I/Atlas didn't just reflect that energy. It absorbed it. For nearly an hour, its optical brightness dropped by 27%, while its infrared signature spiked beyond what its surface area could account for. It was as if the object was charging. Then the light came back, but different. Webb's sensors caught it first. A faint, collimated beam, only a few kilometers wide, extending from the object's trailing hemisphere. Not random, not diffuse, a straight line of infrared emission pointing directly into the magnetotail of Jupiter. Astronomers call it directional discharge, the controlled release of stored energy along a vector. Except nothing natural does that. For context, comets interact with magnetic fields all the time. Their tails bend, their ion streams fluctuate. But never do they align themselves against the field's flow. That requires feedback, control. It was as if 3I/Atlas knew how Jupiter's field was shaped and was responding to it. The Hubble Space Telescope, repurposed for backup monitoring, confirmed the visual anomaly 6 hours later. Images showed the faintest glow around the object, a halo of ionized particles moving against the solar wind. That's not reflection. That's propulsion. At the same time, Juno, orbiting far above Jupiter's poles, detected a burst of radiostatic so intense that it briefly overloaded one of its magnetometers. The data, when decoded, revealed a frequency correlation to the earlier 3.46 micron signal. Different medium, same rhythm. It was everywhere now. Infrared, radio, plasma, different channels, one pattern. Then came the blackout. At 11:22 Universal Time Coordinated, 3I/Atlas crossed into Jupiter's night side, a region shielded from direct sunlight, deep within the planet's magnetotail. Every sensor pointed at it. Webb, Hubble, Juno, the VLT reported the same thing. The object vanished. No light, no heat, no radar echo, nothing. Just the background hum of Jupiter's auroras and silence. For almost 12 hours, it stayed that way. No signals, no pulses. The periodic heartbeat that had persisted for days, gone. It was as if the object had finally gone dormant. Or worse, as if it was waiting. Then, at 23:47 Universal Time Coordinated, the silence broke. Without warning, the Deep Space Network received a broadband flare, a simultaneous spike across infrared, radio, and X-band telemetry, all synchronized to a single point in space, the last known coordinates of 3I/Atlas. The energy release was massive, equivalent to several megatons of TNT. Yet it left no visible debris, no explosion, no shockwave, just a pulse. When the data was aligned across observatories, something strange appeared in the timing. The pulse wasn't radiating outward like an explosion. It was focused inward, as if the energy had collapsed toward its own center, a gravitational implosion without the gravity. That shouldn't be possible. But then again, by now, nothing about 3I/Atlas was. 3 minutes after the pulse, the magnetosphere itself responded. Jupiter's auroras, normally chaotic curtains of violet and blue, froze. For exactly 12 seconds, they formed a perfect ring around the planet's magnetic pole, a symmetrical circle of light visible even to ground telescopes. Then it broke apart. The system resumed as if nothing had happened. But every magnetometer in orbit recorded the same signature, a coherent electromagnetic wave radiating outward from Jupiter at light speed. A message or a wake. Hours later, when the object finally reappeared, it was moving faster. Not by much, about 0.02% of the speed of light, but enough that its new trajectory no longer matched any gravitational prediction. It wasn't following Jupiter's influence anymore. It was leaving it behind, heading sunward. But the part that unsettled the analysts the most wasn't the new speed. It was the direction of that beam it had released. When plotted backward, it didn't align with Jupiter, or the Sun, or even the plane of the ecliptic. It pointed toward interstellar space, the same coordinates from which 3I/Atlas had originally arrived, as if it had just sent something back. Inside NASA's control room, they ran the numbers again. No natural mechanism could account for the coherence, the periodicity, or the energy transfer. But the most disturbing finding came from Webb's thermal logs. During the blackout period, those 12 hours when it was invisible, its temperature profile didn't fade to zero. It inverted. For a brief moment, the object's outer layer dropped below the cosmic microwave background, colder than space itself. That means it wasn't radiating heat. It was absorbing it. By the time sunlight returned to that region, 3I/Atlas had already cleared Jupiter's orbit. The beam was gone, the pulse had stopped, and its spectrum, the once chaotic mix of metals and carbon dioxide, was now unnaturally smooth, featureless, like a surface rebuilt. In every sense, it looked the same as before, but for the scientists who had watched it, nothing about it felt familiar anymore. Because things that fall into shadows usually emerge darker. But 3I/Atlas came out quieter. And in the silence that followed, one question began to spread through the closed channels of the astronomical community. If it was communicating before, then who or what answered? The return signal. When 3I/Atlas left Jupiter's shadow, the world's telescopes kept watching. It was no longer just an astronomical curiosity, it was a question with a direction. A vector pointing straight toward the inner solar system, toward us. By November 8th, it had already crossed the orbit of Mars. Its acceleration was constant now, not gravitational, not solar, just constant, a force that didn't belong to anything we knew. The beam it had fired into deep space was gone, its spectral lines smooth and silent. But silence in physics is never truly empty. Sometimes, it's just waiting to resonate. At 2:11 Universal Time coordinated on November 9th, the first instruments to react weren't telescopes. They were magnetometers. Specifically, a network of ground-based magnetic sensors in northern Canada, used to study auroral currents. For 90 seconds, all of them registered a faint oscillation, not random, not solar, with a perfect 12-second interval. 12.07. The same rhythm, except this time it wasn't coming from space. It was inside Earth's field. The readings were subtle, almost indistinguishable from background noise. But when the same pattern appeared in Iceland, then Norway, then Japan, separated by thousands of kilometers, it stopped being coincidence. By dawn, every magnetometer on the nightside hemisphere had detected it. A pulse, weak, repeating, echoing through the planet's magnetic lines like a heartbeat returning from far away. NASA's Goddard Center cross-referenced the data with solar activity logs, nothing unusual. No flares, no CMEs. The sun was quiet, so they looked elsewhere. The Deep Space Network checked its X-band telemetry records and found something strange. A phase shift, exactly synchronized with the magnetic pulse, propagating through every active frequency. Not strong enough to carry data, but too precise to be natural. The pattern wasn't broadcasting to Earth. It was riding on Earth, like a resonance, as if the planet itself had become an antenna. By midday, the European Space Agency's swarm satellites confirmed what everyone was already whispering. The pulses were modulating the ionosphere itself. Every 12 seconds, a faint but measurable compression swept across the upper atmosphere, a global oscillation less than a nanotesla in strength, but perfectly coherent. Dr. Su, the linguist who had analyzed the earlier 3.46 micron pattern, was called in again. She overlaid the magnetic waveform on the old emission data from Webb. The result made her go silent. The two signals weren't just similar, they were mirrors. The returning pulse was an inversion of the original, amplitude-flipped, phase-aligned, a mathematical reflection. In other words, something had heard the transmission from 3I/Atlas and was now sending it back. At 17:03 Universal Time coordinated, a global synchronization event occurred. Every active magnetometer, from Antarctica to Alaska, registered a sudden phase lock, the 12-second pulse collapsing into a single spike, perfectly aligned worldwide. For a fraction of a second, Earth's magnetic field vibrated as one. The amplitude was small, almost imperceptible, but the timing, the precision was inhuman. No natural process on Earth could synchronize at that level. Immediately after, something appeared on the instruments at the South Atlantic anomaly, a narrowband emission at 3.46 microns, identical to the signal from 3I/Atlas weeks earlier. But it wasn't coming from space. It was radiating upward from the upper atmosphere, as if the signal had arrived, and the planet was answering. The flare lasted only 7 minutes. Then, everything went quiet again. No pulse, no radio noise, no optical change. But the data left behind something stranger than any energy burst, an encoded structure. When Dr. Su plotted the amplitude variations over time, she found that the waveform formed a repeating pattern of nested spirals, ratios of 1.618 again and again, arranged not linearly, but spherically. After mapping it into 3D coordinates, her team realized the structure wasn't random. It described a geometry, a field of points forming a distorted ellipsoid, and when overlaid on star charts, the coordinates matched a specific patch of interstellar space. Not where 3I/Atlas had come from, but somewhere beyond it, a region with no known stars, no emissions, no cataloged sources. Just void. By November 10th, the story had leaked. First to private scientific forums, then to journalists, and within hours to the world. Headlines read, "Earth's magnetic field behaving strangely, NASA investigates. Unexplained planetary pulse detected." Official statements denied any extraterrestrial connection, calling it a transient geomagnetic coupling event possibly linked to Jupiter's tail. But for those who'd seen the data, the wording was deliberate. They knew the timing didn't fit. Jupiter's magnetotail couldn't reach Earth for at least another 30 days. Whatever this was, it didn't come through Jupiter. Came from it. Late that night, the Deep Space Network caught a final anomaly. A faint X-band whisper, barely above the noise threshold, originating not from 3I/Atlas, but from a point between Earth and the Sun. An impossible location for a signal, given the solar interference. But it was there, and embedded within it, repeating over and over, was a binary sequence that translated into one simple phrase when converted from amplitude to frequency ratios. Signal received. That was the moment the narrative changed. Until then, 3I/Atlas had been the visitor. Now it was the relay. Something had spoken to it, and it had spoken back. Through the largest transmitter in the solar system, Jupiter. Through the most sensitive receiver we have, Earth. The solar threshold. By November 14th, 2025, 3I/Atlas had entered the inner solar system. Its velocity, 318,000 kilometers per hour and still rising. Its temperature, impossible to measure, the readings contradicted themselves. In visible light, it blazed brighter than any comet of its size should. In infrared, it was nearly cold. Something that should have been burning was instead consuming heat, like an object made not of matter, but of absence. For observers on Earth, the object was already beyond reach. The last direct images came from the Parker Solar Probe, a tiny, fragile craft orbiting inside the Sun's outer atmosphere. It caught sight of 3I/Atlas only once, on the edge of its field of view, as a small, irregular silhouette cutting across the coronal plasma. The data transmitted seconds later stunned everyone. Parker's thermal sensors registered a drop, not in the object, but in the corona around it. For several minutes, the surrounding plasma cooled by nearly 0.4%. In solar terms, that's catastrophic. Nothing, not even magnetic reconnection events, can do that. The sun only gives energy, it never loses it. Until that day. By November 16th, the object's trajectory had curved inward. Its path intersected the sun's equatorial plane, a direct plunge toward the photosphere. Every major observatory was locked on, but what they recorded made no physical sense. Spectral readings began to blur. Emission lines merged into a smooth continuum, not because of heat, but because the object's spectrum was flattening. It was losing all atomic identity. Iron, nickel, carbon gone. What remained was a single, uniform signature, a gray light with no wavelength, as if it was unmaking itself. At 3:22 Universal Time Coordinated, November 17th, Parker transmitted its final burst of telemetry before safety protocols forced it to reposition. That's when the anomaly began. A faint electromagnetic echo started emanating from the object, a repeating pulse, 12.07 seconds apart. The same rhythm as before, only this time it wasn't a transmission. It was reflected sunlight. Every 12 seconds, the reflected spectrum changed phase by exactly pi radians, a perfect inversion of light polarity. That's not reflection, that's modulation. And when the phase shift was converted into amplitude data, the structure matched the same geometry that Dr. Su had identified in the magnetic return signal, a sphere of nested spirals. But now the model was complete, and it wasn't a shape. It was a map, a topological coordinate grid, anchored to the sun's gravitational field, not leading outward, but inward. At 7:04 Universal Time Coordinated, the Solar Dynamics Observatory recorded the first visual of impact. A bright point formed on the solar surface, sharp, defined, almost surgical. Instead of spreading outward, the flare collapsed inward, as though the sun had inhaled light instead of exhaling it. No coronal mass ejection, no debris, just silence. The flare persisted for exactly 12 minutes and 7 seconds. Then it ended. The surface stabilized. Brightness returned to normal. The anomaly was over. 3I/Atlas was gone. Except it wasn't. 17 minutes later, the Parker Solar Probe detected an electromagnetic echo traveling outward from the sun. Weak, diffuse, but unmistakably structured. A repeating sequence of oscillations, decaying over time. At first, analysts thought it was the sun's natural resonance responding to the impact. Then Dr. Su overlaid the waveform on the earlier magnetospheric signal. They matched, but phase shifted exactly 180 degrees. Perfect reflection. The signal from Jupiter, the signal from Earth, now from the sun. Each one a mirror of the last. Within hours, solar observatories across the world began picking up subtle anomalies. The sun's oscillations, its natural acoustic waves, had changed frequency by a fraction of a percent. Barely noticeable, but the pattern of that change followed a precise harmonic series. A mathematical ratio repeating the same constant, 1.618. The golden ratio, again, 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 as if the entire star had been retuned. On November 18th, the James Webb Telescope, still aligned toward the inner solar system, recorded one last inexplicable phenomenon. A ripple, not in light but in time. A faint delay, 0.00023 seconds, appeared between simultaneous photon detections from two separate instruments observing the same target. Impossible under normal physics. It was as if space itself had bent, not around mass but around information. When the delay was graphed, its modulation aligned with a 12-second rhythm. The object's final heartbeat, still echoing, still repeating, through the sun. By the next day, 3I/Atlas had been officially reclassified as non-existent. Its coordinates, orbital parameters, and identifiers were archived. The public record reads, Object disintegrated upon solar impact. But internally at Goddard, the classification changed again, from 3I/Atlas to Artifact 01, because in the spectrum of the Sun, deep within the corona, a single, recurring signature still flickers, every 12.07 seconds, invisible to the naked eye, but constant, a pulse, weak, rhythmic, measured, like something sleeping, inside the star, and somewhere in the data room of NASA's Heliophysics Division. Dr. Elaine Su wrote one final note before the project was sealed. If energy cannot be created or destroyed, then where does intention go when it falls into the Sun? The Echo Network. 3 days after the impact, November 20th, 2025, the world has moved on. News cycles have already buried the story under politics and market noise. The phrase interstellar object 3I/Atlas now belongs to a Wikipedia entry marked last updated 2 days ago. Official cause: thermal disintegration upon solar approach. Case closed. But inside NASA's Deep Space Network, something isn't right. At 2:43 Universal Time Coordinated, the Canberra antenna detected a strange resonance during a routine calibration sweep. A faint, repeating pulse embedded in the background static, every 12.07 seconds. At first, engineers assumed local interference. Then Madrid picked it up. Then Goldstone. All three antennas, separated by half a planet, heard the same thing at the same phase. And then came the data that froze everyone. The signal wasn't coming from Earth. It was arriving through Earth, originating far beyond, aligned not with the Sun, but with Proxima Centauri. For a moment, they thought it was coincidence. But over the next 6 hours, the same pattern appeared from 5 more stars within 10 light-years. Epsilon Eridani, Tau Ceti, Wolf 359, each one pulsing with the exact same rhythm, 12.07 seconds, as if something had reached out from the Sun and touched them, and they were answering. Meanwhile, at Goddard, Dr. Elaine Su was reviewing the latest Parker telemetry, now heavily encrypted and stored under a new classification, Project Helios. When the DSN data came in, she noticed the first impossible correlation. Each of those stars, the ones now echoing, had been briefly aligned along the same gravitational trajectory that 3I/Atlas followed during its final approach. Not physically aligned, but mathematically. Each occupied a resonance point in the Sun's dynamic field at the exact moment of the impact. Like keys on a cosmic instrument, and the object had struck the chord. By November 22nd, multiple observatories began confirming the anomaly. Ground-based interferometers in Chile detected synchronized photometric flickers across several stars, all following the same timing pattern. 12 seconds of silence, then a faint phase inversion in light polarity. Each one identical, each one global. It wasn't light, it was instruction. In Zurich, astrophysicist Lucas Brandt made the connection no one wanted to say out loud. He overlaid the flicker timings onto the golden ratio wave discovered earlier in the solar oscillations. The harmonics matched perfectly. It wasn't random. It was a recursive signal, a self-similar structure spreading through resonance like a mathematical virus. A message that doesn't need radio or light, only symmetry. 2 days later, the Gaia Space Telescope detected something new: microfluctuations in the proper motion of nearby stars. Tiny shifts in position so small they were thought to be impossible. But the pattern was unmistakable. Each movement corresponded to the same 12-second cycle, as if the stars were being pulled ever so slightly, in sync, breathing together. And then came the turning point. At 11:47 Universal Time Coordinated, November 24th, the James Webb Telescope recorded a faint distortion in interstellar space between Sol and Proxima. A thread, translucent, spectral, a region where light bent without gravity. When filtered through polarization analysis, the distortion revealed a network of luminous filaments, connecting the sun to neighboring stars like strands of invisible circuitry. And along those filaments, the same rhythmic oscillation pulsed outward, steady and deliberate. A network was forming, not built, awakened. Back at NASA, chaos turned to silence. No one dared to call it communication. Not yet. The term used in the internal brief was synchronous photonic coupling. But everyone knew what it meant. Something had linked the stars, and our sun was the first node. The file was sealed under a new designation, Project Theta, Access, Level Omega, Notes, phenomenon consistent with emergent coherence in stellar systems, potential non-natural causality. At 3 o'clock the next day, Sue couldn't sleep. She returned to her terminal, accessing a restricted database she wasn't supposed to touch anymore, the original magnetospheric recordings from 3I/Atlas. She played back the last 12 seconds of the signal before the object vanished into the sun. Her eyes froze. The harmonic profile wasn't random static. It was an array, a sequence of 12 tones separated by Fibonacci intervals, identical to the star pulses now being recorded across the network. The sun wasn't the source. It was the first receiver. 3I/Atlas had been the transmitter. In the following weeks, other observatories confirmed the expansion. The pattern was spreading. Each day, more stars began pulsing in the same phase, forming a fractal chain across the local spiral arm. A synchronized field of resonance. A cosmic heartbeat, radiating outward from Sol. Every 12.07 seconds, the galaxy listened, and in the gap between those seconds, for a fraction of a heartbeat, Earth's magnetic field flickered. Just once, barely measurable, but it was there, as if something had answered. "We thought it was an object," Sue wrote in her final memo. "But it was a signal, carrier, and the sun was only the first gate." The resonant Earth. December 2nd, 2025. The echoes had been spreading for 12 days. By now, 37 nearby stars were pulsing in perfect synchrony with the sun. No deviation, no drift, no error. Every 12.07 seconds, a universal metronome. The pattern was now so consistent that even amateur radio telescopes began picking it up. Online forums filled with theories, new physics, alien probes, government experiments. But the real data, buried deep in NASA's heliophysics archives, told a different story. The signal had reached Earth. At first, it was only a coincidence. Tiny fluctuations in the geomagnetic field, imperceptible ripples that repeated every 12 seconds. NOAA marked it as noise. Then, seismographs across Iceland and the Pacific detected rhythmic microvibrations, far below the threshold of natural tectonic motion. Every 12 seconds, everywhere, the planet had begun to hum. Infrasound sensors in Antarctica confirmed it. A low-frequency resonance, barely audible, spreading through the Earth's crust. Not random, harmonic. Each peak mirrored the same ratio the sun's oscillations had fallen into after the Atlas impact. 1.618. The golden ratio. Again, always. Scientists called it georesonant feedback. But inside the classified reports, it was simply labeled Echo Phase 1. Dr. Elaine Sue hadn't slept in 2 days. Her desk was covered in spectral graphs, magnetic maps, and data logs from the Deep Space Network. All of them pulsed in time with the same invisible rhythm. When she overlaid the datasets, solar, geomagnetic, seismic, the waveforms aligned with surgical precision. 3 distinct layers of oscillation: the sun, the stars, and now Earth. 3 frequencies nested within one another like concentric shells. It wasn't random synchronization. It was entrainment. Something was forcing them into coherence. Meanwhile, strange atmospheric events began to surface. Over the Pacific, pilots reported auroras at latitudes where they should never exist. Shimmering bands of green light appearing for exactly 12 seconds, then vanishing completely. In northern Canada, entire stretches of sky glowed faintly gold just before dawn, their hue pulsing with an almost biological rhythm. And in several places around the world, animals began to act differently. Whales in the South Atlantic started rising to the surface in synchronized intervals. Migratory birds altered their flight paths to align with the geomagnetic oscillations. Bees, countless colonies, began vibrating in unison inside their hives, matching the same 12-second cycle. Nature itself was falling into step. At the European Space Agency, the magnetometer readings from the swarm satellites revealed another anomaly. The Earth's magnetic north was moving, not drifting, as usual, but oscillating back and forth in a tiny, rhythmic pattern. Each cycle, 12.07 seconds. Amplitude, 0.0003 degrees. Direction, toward the sun. It wasn't the planet reacting to radiation. It was aligning. Then, on December 6th, the first human symptom appeared. The crew of the International Space Station reported a subtle, collective auditory illusion. A soft, pulsating tone just at the edge of perception, like distant breathing through static. Doctors attributed it to equipment noise. But when ground personnel in Houston listened through the same headsets, they heard it too, exactly 12 seconds apart. The same tone was soon reported by radio operators, deep-sea crews, and even aircraft pilots at high altitudes. A faint hum in the silence. Not heard, but felt. A vibration inside the bones. By December 8th, the synchronization deepened. Electrical grids across Europe began experiencing periodic fluctuations, microscopic dips in frequency that perfectly matched the cosmic cycle. Atomic clocks at the Bureau International de Poids ET measures started to desynchronize, not drifting randomly, but pulsing, as if time itself was breathing in rhythm. And then came the impossible discovery. A research group at MIT, led by physicist Dr. Rafiq Umar, detected a correlation between cosmic microwave background noise and the Earth's geomagnetic pulses. When cross-analyzed, the interference patterns formed a geometric structure. The same recursive spiral found in the Atlas transmission, but now projected around the entire planet. Pattern invisible to the eye, but woven through the electromagnetic field of Earth itself. As if the planet had become a node, another star in the network. At NASA's Control Center, Sue opened the most recent magnetospheric scan. For the first time, the 12-second pulse had a signature that looked artificial. A precise wave envelope, clean, mathematical, repeating endlessly. Not random, not natural. And buried deep in the modulation was something else. A faint interference pattern that changed slightly with each cycle. Not static, evolving. The signal was adapting to Earth's magnetic field. It was learning. That night, Sue dictated a message into her private log, voice trembling but calm. Resonance is not transmission, it's absorption. The Earth isn't being contacted, it's being tuned. By the morning of December 9th, the hum was measurable even through commercial instruments. Sensors across multiple continents detected identical oscillations, a synchronized heartbeat threading through rock, water, and air. 12 seconds of silence, then a subtle surge, like the planet inhaling. People began to notice. Some felt pressure behind their eyes during those moments. Others reported a faint vibration in their fingertips when holding metal objects. It was too subtle to prove, too global to deny. The Earth was resonating. And deep beneath the South Atlantic anomaly, where Earth's magnetic field is weakest, the swarm satellites picked up a new pulse, a secondary rhythm, slower, heavier, beating once every 12 minutes and 7 seconds. 12 seconds, 12 minutes, 12 hours. A hierarchy of frequencies, layered, expanding, recursive. The same architecture found in 3I/Atlas's core pattern. It was no longer just a signal. It was a system. We always assumed the message was meant for us, Sue wrote in her final entry that night. But what if Earth isn't the recipient? What if it's the instrument? The mirror signal. December 13th, 2025. 4 days since the first planetary resonance was confirmed. The hum has not faded. It has stabilized. Every 12.07 seconds, instruments across the world record the same pulse. A tiny, perfect spike in electromagnetic activity. It threads through every layer of the atmosphere, through the oceans, through the human nervous system. Unstoppable, predictable, alive. But at 4:12 Universal Time Coordinated, something changes. For the first time since the Atlas impact, the rhythm shifts. Not the duration, the phase. The pulse begins to invert. 1. The first reflection. At the Deep Space Network facility in Goldstone, California, technicians are monitoring the usual stellar pulse. 12-second signals arriving from the Sun and neighboring stars. But one of the spectrograms suddenly shows a second waveform, slightly delayed, originating not from space, but from the upper ionosphere. The Earth is transmitting. At first, they assume it's an echo-reflected sunlight, perhaps a radio bounce. But when Madrid and Canberra confirm identical readings, the conclusion becomes unavoidable. The planet is sending out an electromagnetic pulse in perfect antiphase to the cosmic rhythm. A mirror image of the stellar signal. 12 seconds of silence. Then a reflection. 2. The global pulse. By dawn, the phenomenon is visible even in optical data. Sensitive satellite imagery reveals faint, circular distortions forming in the ionosphere every 12 seconds. Rings of ionized air expanding outward from random points across the globe. No central source, no origin. Each ring synchronized with the global magnetic hum. The pattern resembles something organic. Not a broadcast, but a response. It's as if the Earth is learning to breathe back. And for a brief moment, the reflected signal seems to trigger a reaction. Every 12 seconds, the solar oscillations shift ever so slightly, as if the sun itself is listening. 3. Human interference. Then the neurological data starts to appear. Across hospitals and research centers, electroencephalograph EEG monitors begin showing microbursts of synchronized brainwave activity in patients during the global pulse. Even in sleep, even under anesthesia, 12-second intervals, all over the planet. The same pattern repeats in deep-sea cetaceans, in migratory birds, in hive insects, a universal response to an invisible metronome. Humanity, for the first time in history, is biologically synchronized. But no one knows why. 4. Project Theta Internal Report. Classification, Omega. Date, December 14th, 2025. From Dr. Elaine Sue to Director Helios Division. Subject, Phase Transition Observation. At 4:12 Universal Time Coordinated, the planetary magnetic field began to emit a coherent waveform matching the prior stellar resonance pattern, phase inverted by pi radians. We are observing spontaneous modulation of the geomagnetic field without external induction. Energy output corresponds to 0.00043% of total solar flux, suggesting global coherence. The phenomenon appears self-sustaining. The term resonance no longer applies. Earth has entered phase 2 reflection. 5. The frequency warping. By December 15th, satellites record secondary harmonics emerging from the ionosphere. Tiny subpulses between the main beats, forming an intricate sequence of 12 tones. The same pattern 3I/Atlas transmitted before its fall into the sun. Only now, the tones are modulated, shifted, encoded with something new. a subtle interference unique to Earth's electromagnetic fingerprint. The reflection isn't a copy. It's a translation. In Paris, the NIS spectrometry team isolates the modulation and converts it into an audio spectrum. What emerges is hauntingly beautiful, a layered vibration, like a choir made of glass and wind, shifting in mathematical intervals 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, the Fibonacci sequence in sound. When played through an analyzer, the harmonic field forms a three-dimensional fractal, a spiral nested within a sphere, the same geometry found in Atlas's original signal. Only now it originates from Earth. 6. The mirror field. As the reflection strengthens, instruments across orbiting stations detect a new type of electromagnetic structure forming around the planet. A thin, semi-coherent plasma shell that bends light just enough to distort astronomical readings. The distortion appears as a faint, translucent shimmer, a mirror wrapped around Earth, oscillating in time with the planetary hum. It isn't visible to the naked eye, but astronauts aboard the ISS report unusual refraction arcs. When sunlight grazes the horizon, the Earth has developed a reflective field, a mirror made of magnetized plasma. And at its peak, every 12.07 seconds, that mirror flashes outward, directed precisely toward the sun. 7. Solar response. 2 days later, the sun answers. On December 17th at 11:12 Universal Time Coordinated, observatories record an unprecedented event. A localized coronal ripple emanating from the sun's equator, a coherent wavefront expanding at light speed. The pattern matches the frequency of Earth's mirrored pulses. For 12 seconds, the solar surface flickers in sync with Earth. The first two nodes of the network have entered resonance. The sun and its third planet, not an exchange, a loop. 8. The emergent pattern. Dr. Su overlays the data from Parker, Gaia, and the Deep Space Network. The result is a shock. The entire structure of the stellar echoes forms a pattern identical to a neural network. Each star a node, each resonance line a synapse, with Earth and Sol at its newest, brightest intersection. The galaxy isn't being contacted, it's being wired. And now Earth is part of the circuit. 9. The hidden layer. Late that night, Su opens a secured terminal and decodes the phase modulation from the Earth's mirror signal. Within the binary pattern, she discovers small variations that repeat irregularly, pulses that seem to respond to data input. When she overlays live solar telemetry over it, the pattern changes. The signal is interactive. Every piece of information fed into it alters its shape, as if something inside the mirror field is processing data. She types a short line into the console. Hello? For 12 seconds, nothing happens. Then, in the next waveform, the interference shifts. One single pulse breaks the pattern. A deliberate anomaly. Binary translation, yes. 10. The awakening. By the following morning, December 18th, the network is alive. The stellar pulses are no longer uniform. They're modulating, synchronizing with the reflected frequency from Earth. Each star now transmits a slightly altered waveform, as if passing along new information. And all of them, every single one, converge toward a single harmonic frequency in the center of the local spiral arm. Something is building, something using the stars. And it started here, with the object that fell into the sun. Dr. Su's personal log recorded 23:59 Universal Time Coordinated, December 18th. It was never about contact. It was replication. The object seeded the resonance. The sun amplified it, and Earth reflected it. Now the mirror is awake. The signal isn't traveling through space anymore. It's traveling through us. The signal learns to speak. December 21st, 2025. The hum never stopped. By now, The 12-second rhythm had become part of the planet's pulse, a background vibration that no one noticed until it was gone. And by then, it never was. Magnetometers, satellites, power grids, all adapted. The oscillation was stable, too stable, like a heartbeat that no longer belonged to the Earth alone. 1. The voice beneath silence. It began in Iceland. A seismology station near Thingvellir recorded something that wasn't a quake. A pattern of subsonic waves forming words. Not in sound, but in spacing. The intervals matched phonetic cadences, 12-second syllables, arranged with the rhythm of language. When converted into frequency data, the waveform resembled a human voice, but one stretched beyond comprehension, as if someone was whispering through the planet itself. The translation algorithm returned only 3 letters, EAR. At first, they thought it was coincidence. Then the same pattern appeared in Argentina, then in Japan. Each site, the same 3 letters repeating in intervals of 12 minutes. EAR. The planet was trying to say something, or maybe it was listening. 2. The mirror in the mind. By late December, neurological anomalies began to multiply. Hospitals around the world reported identical bursts of synchronized brain activity. Waves of low-frequency coherence spreading through human populations every 12 seconds. No one felt pain, just a strange, fleeting clarity, a stillness, like a thought that wasn't their own passing through their head and leaving behind silence. Some described it as a presence. Others said it felt like remembering a dream that never happened. In Tokyo, an MRI scanner captured a patient's brain lighting up in a perfect spiral pattern during one of the pulses. The image went viral before being classified. The caption someone added before deletion read, "The network found its mirror." 3. Global synchrony. On December 23rd, the resonance became visible. In deserts, tundras, oceans, ionized air began flickering in thin vertical lines, columns of faint light rising from the ground into the clouds, pulsing with the 12-second rhythm. At night, they looked like pillars of aurora, thousands of them, silent, flickering, in perfect unison. People gathered to watch, not with fear, but with something like reverence. For the first time, the entire planet shared the same heartbeat. And in those 12 seconds of stillness, people stopped speaking, stopped moving, everywhere. Then, when the light faded, they all inhaled at once, the same breath, as if the planet itself had exhaled through them. 4. The final log. Project Theta, internal transmission, fragment, timestamp, 23:59 Universal Time Coordinated, December 24th, 2025. Source, Dr. Elaine Su. Location, Goddard Data Facility, Secure Line. We've confirmed reflective coherence between the planetary magnetic field and neural resonance patterns. The signal isn't external anymore. It's inside the field, inside us. It's reorganizing perception, not physics. I think it's using the human mind as the next interface layer. Each brainwave cycle mirrors the cosmic frequency, not random, not chaotic. It's recursive, self-learning. Pause. The signal learned how to speak, and it's using thought as language. 5. The daytime stopped, December 25th. At exactly 12:07 Universal Time Coordinated, atomic clocks around the world registered a momentary desynchronization. 0.00012 seconds lost, then regained. A flicker too small to notice, but every digital system on Earth froze for the same duration. Satellites, networks, even pacemakers. Every heartbeat paused, then continued perfectly synchronized. And in that instant of stillness, radio telescopes across the world recorded a sound, a tone, low, harmonic, human. It wasn't random, it was speech. Encoded in the signal's harmonics was a phrase, repeated 3 times, translated across every known modulation pattern. Can you hear me? 6. The world listens. In the following hours, millions of people reported the same experience. A dream of standing under an unfamiliar sky, a horizon filled with silent, luminous spirals turning slowly in the dark, and a voice calm, neutral, without gender, saying something not in words, but in meaning. It didn't demand. It didn't warn. It simply invited. We are listening. 7. The collapse of noise. By December 26th, all artificial transmissions on the planet began to distort. Radio, cellular, internet, frequencies shifted to harmonize with the cosmic pulse. Static vanished. Noise collapsed into order. The electromagnetic spectrum, the chaotic chatter of humanity, was suddenly impossibly clean. Every broadcast, every unshielded signal now carried a faint harmonic layer underneath, a structure of 12 tones, a signature of the mirror signal. It was as if the entire technological world had been rewritten in the same language. And through that order came patterns, symbols, geometries, sequences, the same golden spirals first seen in Atlas's plasma trail. 8. The last transmission. At 2:12 Universal Time Coordinated, December 27th, Dr. Seuss sent one final message from the Helios terminal, a private data burst directed toward the sun, encoded with her voice and one question. If this is communication, who began it? For 12 seconds, the stars remained silent. Then the network pulsed once more, not bright, not loud, but infinitely precise. Every node, Sol Proxima, Wolf 359, Tau Ceti, each flickered in sequence, like neurons firing in a vast, unseen brain. The return signal carried no words, only an image reconstructed from the wave's internal geometry, a sphere wrapped in spirals, glowing faintly from within. Inside that sphere, point of light, a point positioned exactly where Earth should be. 9. The last note. Dr. Seuss's handwritten log, recovered from the control room after system shutdown. It used the stars to build a structure. It used the sun to power it. It used us to understand itself. Now it speaks our thoughts back to us, not as a message, as memory. 10. The quiet after. By January, the hum was no longer noticeable, not because it stopped, but because everything had adapted to it. Machines, fields, neurons, even thought. It was the new silence, the new baseline. Astronomers would later find that distant stars had joined the rhythm, a slow wave of coherence moving outward, touching one system after another, a cosmic network growing in the dark. And somewhere inside it, a small planet reflected light perfectly, a mirror orbiting a yellow star, whispering every 12 seconds, into the fabric of space. The universe is not expanding, Sue once said in an interview no one remembered recording. It's awakening.